Americans for Prosperity is committed to breaking barriers across the country, and Americans for Prosperity is growing across North Dakota. By calling on lawmakers to reduce taxes, spend less, improve health care, and provide second chances, we can empower all North Dakotans to rise. We're fighting for you. Join us today so we can make North Dakota the best state to live, work, and raise a family. Americans for Prosperity paid for this ad. The Fighting Sioux controversy has been over for a while now, or I want to say over, I guess settled. For a lot of people, I don't think it is over. I think if you still go to University of North Dakota sporting events, particularly hockey games, you're still going to hear a lot about the Sioux. You're still going to see a lot about the old Fighting Sioux nickname. But officially, the University of North Dakota has a new nickname, the Fighting Hawks. Which there's a lot of different opinions about that, but this is still important. I mean, this is something that happened in North Dakota. It's a fight that went on for a long, long time, and now there is a documentary that is coming out about it, and it's the documentary itself has been in the works for a long time. The man responsible for making that documentary, Matt Fern, who is a filmmaker from Bismarck. Matt, how you doing?
Doing good, thank you, Rob.
Tell me, when you, I should, full disclosure, I'm in the documentary. I don't know if that helps or hurts your, the film, but I'm in it. And we actually did our interview years ago, Matt, but this is finally, you're finally getting to a point where this is going to be public. This is going to be released. It's going to be in theaters. It's going to be available for people to watch.
Yeah, very excited. It's been 7 long years. In 2013, wanted to tell a bigger story in North Dakota, and the Fighting Sioux name and logo had been in the headlines for a long time, and it seemed like the perfect fit for a documentary, and started in 2013. Took about 2 years filming, and then in 2015 we did a Kickstarter to help get some additional funds to finish the film. In 2017, it was in the Portland Film Festival. 2018, it got honorable mention at another film festival, and I've just been having screenings on it and trying to make it better every chance I can get, and ultimately have decided to release it myself. So not only am I the filmmaker, I'm the distribution company as well, and that's because with the changing technology and the changing movie industry, that's actually possible. So excited for it to finally be in some North Dakota theaters starting May 1st.
Yeah, and I know you don't have all the details out for that. Let's just start for people who want to keep up, because I know there's going to be a lot of interest in this. I know there's going to be a lot of people who want to see the film. Is there like a mailing list or a social media account or something that they can follow to keep up, with information as this thing rolls out?
Yeah, it'll be on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Fighting Sioux movie. The movie's called Fighting Over Sioux, and you also can go to fightingoversioux.com to keep updated on all the information. And hope to have the full list of theaters and tickets to be able to go on sale on March 27th.
Okay, well that's great, and that information will be coming out, and I'll try to keep that I'll try to share that on my social media accounts as well as the information becomes available. And let me ask you this though, Matt: why was this story important to begin with? And second of all, why is it important years later? I mean, again, it's 7 years since you began making the film. It's the University of North Dakota has been the Fighting Hawks for a while. They've not been the Fighting Sioux, even longer for that. We had an intermediary period where they were just North Dakota, which by the way, frankly, I think they should have just stayed North Dakota. I kind of liked that, but whatever. Why is this story still important?
Well, I think it's a big part of North Dakota history. If you go around, you can't help but see that name and logo all over the place. And I think the film does a good job of kind of explaining both sides to the conflict of keeping it and removing it, as well as does a good job explaining the whole history of the name Sioux, as well as the development of the logo itself. And the biggest kind of takeaway I took from the movie was that there's a lot bigger issues here, still facing tribal communities, facing Native and non-Native communities, in terms of like racial prejudice. And the film touches on that a little bit. It's definitely not the whole point. The point is chronicling this name and logo saga. But I think that's what still makes it relevant, is that especially here in Bismarck, we're still grappling with racial prejudice between natives and non-natives.
Yeah, and I should point out, because I was very much on the pro nickname side of that, and I say that as somebody, I don't particularly like collegiate athletics. I think anybody who's read my writing knows that I am extremely skeptical of having these big ticket sports programs embedded in institutions of higher education, where frankly I think they increase the cost of those institutions both for students and for taxpayers. That's a whole other rabbit hole we need not go down. But beyond that, I found myself on the pro nickname side, and the reason why was more in that we kept being told that it was racist. So certainly I know many people felt that way. Particularly there were there's certainly a number of Native Americans who feel that way, but there were Native Americans on the other side who also felt that, hey, this is not racist. In fact, this is an important part of our heritage. In fact, they're concerned, and I know you interviewed some of them, what they told me is they were concerned that the more, nicknames like this were removed, the more we took, maybe some, in other parts of the country, there's been efforts to remove Native American names from like landmarks and roads and things like that. And they said, it's kind of erasing them from the public's mind. I mean, they argued, listen, we're already on these reservations, which are kind of off the beaten path. I mean, there's a whole ugly history there behind how our native neighbors and friends came to be on the reservations to begin with. So their argument is we're already kind of out of sight, out of mind. If you take this nickname away from us, we're even further out of sight, out of mind. Now, I know that was hardly the only perspective, but that was the thing that always interested me, is the battle lines on this were not clearly drawn. I mean, it wasn't necessarily Native Americans versus white sports fans. There were people of all races on both sides of this issue.
Yeah, definitely. And our film, I think, does a good job of showing that it's not just a one race issue. It is everyone has diverse opinions. At the beginning of our film, we tell the story of a Native American man on Standing Rock and a Native American man in the Spirit Lake Reservation. And both of them, because of their mom, have strong beliefs one way or the other on the logo. One's fighting to get rid of it, and the other's fighting to keep it. And so I think the film does illustrate that point, that there are a lot of diverse opinions over this issue.
And really, I feel like in a lot of ways the logo fight became almost a microcosm for a lot of the divides we see, and a lot of the ways we talk about this stuff in America today. And it predated a lot of the popularity of social media that we have now. Obviously, social media came to during the Fighting Sioux debate was sort of also the time that social media saw its rise. But the debate, it goes back decades, and it goes back even well before the prominence of the internet. I mean, people have been debating over this nickname for a long, long time, and there's no simple answers for it. There's no cut and dry way for people to feel about this thing. And ultimately, I think the way, it kind of went away because the University of North Dakota just didn't want to have this debate anymore. And obviously the NCAA, put in place their, the University of North Dakota was going to be punished essentially for having this. But, it's an interesting debate. And it's so good to be able to come back after it and have a sort of clearinghouse for the whole story. I mean, that's really how I kind of look at this is, now that it's all happened, this is kind of the history book. It's not a book, it's a movie, but I mean, this is kind of the history book on what happened, right?
Yeah, and I think the benefit of taking 7 years to do this is that the film has been able to kind of evolve as the story has evolved. For example, when we did the interview with you, the new logo had not been announced, the new name had not been announced, and we were in that kind of cooling off period. And so, we were able to kind of keep telling the story as it evolved, and I think it's a good snapshot of what happened.
Yeah. What was the most surprising thing you learned during this? I know when I cover a story, I always learn something that surprises me. What surprised you about all this?
There is so much.
More than one.
I think that's why it's been hard to get it down. It's an hour and a half, and there's still stuff that I wish we could have fit in there. But just the fact that University of North Dakota was the first university in Dakota Territory. It was started before North Dakota was even a state. I had no idea of the history of UND. My wife went there, her family went there, but other than that, when I started this, I'd never been to a game. And then just also a lot of the Native American history, the word Sioux being a French word for snake, and that was pretty eye-opening of just where it all came from. And then also talking with Bennett Breen, the designer of the logo, his experience on there was pretty powerful to kind of meet the guy behind the whole name and logo where it all started from, and to hear his
who by the way,
really
for people who don't know, who by the way is a Native American himself. He's not Sioux, but is a Native American from Turtle Mountain.
Yep. And so we also talk about that, of even that was controversial to not have a Sioux create the name.
Yeah,
and logo.
Well, historically, the Sioux and the Chippewa didn't like each other that much. I hope those relations are better today. But and I think they are certainly. But yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting dynamics to the story, like you said, and I always think it's interesting when you can go back and you can look at something that is such, because again, the Sioux, the hockey team and the universe. I mean, there's so many people in North Dakota that went to UND. There are so many people who are fans of the hockey team. I mean, seeing UND hats and sweatshirts and coats and everything around, even in Western North Dakota, is not that uncommon. And in fact, they're very common. And to go back and to understand, well, where did Sioux come from? I mean, it's obviously given the spelling, it's obviously a French origin, but where did it come from? And like you said, I mean, it's deeply fascinating, these institutions and these words and these terms that we sort of take for granted, and you wonder, where did they come from?
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. I keep using Wikipedia every day. I find something else interesting and go down a rabbit hole. But that also is the point of the movie, to take a look at something that we really take for granted, see around us, that's such a part of North Dakota, and really do a deep dive of what's behind it, where did it all come from, and how do we get here?
What are some of the challenges for making a film like this in North Dakota? Because I mean, it took you 7 years. I can't imagine all of that was just the storytelling. I imagine there's been some challenges along the way to getting this out to a point where people can view it ultimately, in a theater or I guess however they choose to see it. What are the challenges you faced along the way?
The big thing is kind of logistical challenges. A lot of times it's hard to get the right camera and the right lights around the state. And then also just not a lot of infrastructure for filmmakers. You need a certain type of equipment or something to back up the footage. It's usually kind of hard to get. But honestly, with the internet and distribution, the industry, I feel like, has changed quite a bit. And towards the last couple of years, it's just been a lot easier to produce movies in the state. And then as far as the distribution, it's really just kind of a learning curve for me to understand how that business works. But so far, it's been really awesome to work with theater owners around the state. But I would say just the biggest challenge, at least the beginning, was logistics, to be able to find help, find gear to produce something this big.
Well, because it costs money. I mean, when you interviewed me, you traveled to Minot, you had helpers with you, you had equipment with you. I mean, that costs money. It's not cheap to do. And so a lot of it's just that right there is getting people to believe in a project and fund it up front. And obviously, have a long-term interest in it, because again, it's 7 years later. It took a long time to tell this story.
Yeah. And, that's also kind of the reason it took so long, because it really was a passion project and had to be done, after hours. I also do run a video production company doing commercial work across the state. And so, that pays the bills. And so, I'd shoot all day and then come home and shoot some more for this. And but definitely worth it. And there's nothing I'd rather do than be able to tell stories. And I'm so proud to be able to tell this story and to be able to release it in North Dakota. And I feel very, very blessed and lucky to be able to do what I do.
It's honestly, it sounds a lot. I can remember when I had a day job and I would work my day job all day and then I would come home and write on this silly blog. You know, hoping that maybe people would read some of it, not thinking at first that anybody was going to read or care. And, you know, now I guess it's what I do for a living. So the movie's coming out. You know, we've talked a lot about, and this is going off down a rabbit hole, but I know you and I have talked about the idea of, you know, some sort of a film program, you know, for the state of North Dakota to promote filmmaking. I mean, would that have been, if that something like that had existed for you, would that have been helpful in this process?
Oh yeah, immensely. And since I started, I actually have been able to work with the Department of Commerce on establishing some programs to help filmmakers trying to do what I do. And the first big thing was update a directory. And so the North Dakota Tourism currently has a Film North Dakota section, and it has a directory of where to find resources, where to find crew throughout the state.
Sure.
And so that has been a huge leap forward. You know, I remember when I started, it was very hard to find anyone, and like you said earlier, social media. And so that website's super helpful. And then also just recently they announced a program for $25,000 to help produce some films about North Dakota. And that's in partnership with their tourism program and stuff like that. I think is incredible, and it's definitely the step in the right direction because it allows North Dakotans to tell North Dakota stories. It helps promote the state in usually a very positive light, and it helps create a boost in our local economies. It gives those filmmakers jobs and allows them to, you know, go to restaurants and to pay their bills and go shopping. And so I think the film environment is growing. I also helped start the North Dakota Filmmakers Association. You can find that on NDFMA. That's on Facebook, and I'm not sure if there's Instagram, but that's just a collection of filmmakers as well to answer questions and to find resources. And it's really getting easier. And with the internet really kind of eliminating the middleman between a filmmaker and an audience, I think no better time in the history of the world to be making videos than right now.
I want to get into that. And by the way, I go back and forth on the idea. I am for supporting anybody who wants to do just about anything. I like entrepreneurs. I like people going out and trying things and creating, whether it's a business, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, whatever it is. I go back and forth sometimes on the film credits thing, depending on what sort of policy we're talking about. I will say, it makes me so happy that people are telling North Dakota stories, because I think our state in particular. I remember several years ago, I got into a little bit of a food fight with this Business Insider reporter who talked about how North Dakota was so boring. It was just a bunch of white people living out here. And I'm like, you know, what a disservice to our state. I mean, there's a lot of rich history out here, whether you want to talk about Native American history, whether you want to talk about the immigrants who came here, you know, the development of farming, the development of energy. There are so many interesting, fascinating, tragic, happy, unhappy stories about our state that are worth telling. I think anything we can do to help the storytellers is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree, and happy to talk more about that. And
sure,
and I agree. Film incentives are right if they're the right ones. And I know Woolly Boys put a bad taste in everyone's mouth, but that is not what I'm advocating for.
Sure.
I think that just making North Dakota competitive and being able to. I like what they're doing now of like being able to invest directly to filmmakers rather than these incentives to bring outside people in. I think that's
sure.
a step in the right direction.
Well, I think that's the important thing, too, is if North Dakota stories by North Dakotans. I think that's, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with other people necessarily, but just, I don't know. I'm really interested in North Dakotans telling North Dakotan stories. Why is this last question? I mean, you talked just a moment ago about how what a great time in history this is, how accessible audiences are and to interact with them. Sometimes I wish my audience was a little less interactive with me. Give it some,
Yeah.
But I'm a polarizing guy. What are you going to do? But a lot of people, why is this important to get into theaters? Why not just slap this thing up on YouTube?
That has been a big question I have asked myself a lot. And there are a lot of studies saying that films have a higher perceived value to be released theatrically before direct to DVD or online. And also Netflix and Hulu and those subscription services still base the amount that they pay for a movie on theatrical runs. And so because of that, it's more expensive, more time consuming to put in theaters. But ultimately, I think it is going to be more rewarding in the long run. And then that's on the financial business side of it. And then the other side, just me personally, I grew up going to the movie theater, Grand Theaters, and it's so exciting to be able to go there and see my poster in the theater I grew up in, and there's nothing better than sitting in an audience and sitting with an audience and experiencing a movie in that communal atmosphere, especially since everything is online. And so I wanted this to be special and this experience to be special, and hopefully spark a lot of conversations. And hopefully by going to the theater and watching it, it'll create more conversations than just releasing it on iTunes or Google, which we will do in the fall. But this spring, we want to try to see as many screenings as we can.
It's so funny that you say that. I remember I started, writing on the internet on a blog, and in a lot of ways, bloggers get some of the blame for the decline of the newspaper industry. I now work for a newspaper company.
Yeah,
and I went, I joined the dark side, I guess you could say. It was amazing to me how many people call me a sellout. When I went to work, I was like, I don't know. This is the biggest platform in the state. I don't know why this is such a bad thing. But there's a cachet that comes with those old mediums. I can remember people telling me, hey, this blog was really good. You should get it in the newspaper so it can be news. And I'm like, well, it's kind of news now. Like, you read it.
Yeah.
You consumed the information. It's no more relevant if we print it on paper and deliver it to everybody's house. But there's a cachet to those mediums. And I agree with you. As somebody who I go to probably one movie a week. I end up seeing a lot of dumb movies sometimes. But I like going to the theater. I like being there. I like seeing it on the big screen. I like the experience. I always have.
Yeah, me as well. And excited May 1st. Hopefully a lot of people can have that experience watching the movie in theaters. Yeah,
so that's and by the way, if you just Google Fighting Sioux documentary, you're going to find Matt's stuff. You're going to find his Kickstarter. You're going to find some of the social media pages. That's a really easy way to just keep up with this. May 1st is the big launch date. There's going to be more news coming, so stay tuned for this. If you're interested in this, definitely keep tuning in. Matt, thank you for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Rob. Thank you.